containing the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the News Record and Star Ledger December 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick? Mayor McGehee?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provisions of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations under the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick? Mayor McGehee?
Yes. And thank you, Ms. Fritzen, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October 19th Township Committee meeting. I will briefly run through our agenda for this evening. We have a total of 13 agenda items, and we'll start off discussing agenda item number 5, which is our employee spotlight. We are happily recognizing Ed Starzinski, who has been an amazing employee and team member for the Township. We'll then have public comment on agenda items only, a limit of 3 minutes on each comment. From there, we'll have administrative reports. We'll hear from Mr. Gimes, our Township Administrator, from Mr. Desiderio, our Township Attorney, and Ms. Fritzen, our Township Clerk. Next, we'll hear reports from elected officials. We'll hear first from Mr. Daffis. Then we will hear from Mr. Lembrick if he can make it in time. He has an excused absence. After that, we'll hear from Ms. Adams, and then we'll hear from Mr. DeLuca. We have no discussion items for this evening, so from there, we'll go right to our consent agenda, which has a total of 14 items on there. 3 related to contracts, including hauling of leaves, including recyclables, and also our Civic House boiler and hot water replacement. We also have 2 resolutions regarding our audit, which Mr. Kaloje will discuss later on with reports from departments. And then we also have another appointment in terms of an assistant court administrator and also a hire for our community services. From there, we'll go into agenda item number 12, which is public comment on any subject matter, and then we will adjourn. So that is our agenda for this evening. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started by recognizing our employee of the month, our spotlight. And Ed is with us this evening. So Ed, I see you there. At least I see that smiling icon. How are you, Ed?
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Awesome. So I'm going to read a little bit of this recognition appreciation that we want to bestow on you. And then, obviously want to hear from you, want to hear from Ms. Fritzen and also from my colleagues. But whereas the Township of Maplewood has been fortunate to have dedicated staff committed to the mission of our municipality. And whereas recognizing this employee for his commitment to the residents of our town by stepping up and addressing projects, requests, responsibilities, basketball, and above and beyond. And whereas we, the Township Committee, wish to extend the utmost appreciation for your work as a member of our team and everything you've done by handling all the calls during COVID and all the front line and getting information to us when we greatly needed it. And whereas the Township Committee wants to extend sincere best wishes and happiness to your future and your future with the Township Committee and the Township of Maplewood. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Township Committee that we want to recognize and appreciate you, Ed Starlinski, for all the work that you've done at Town Hall and for the greater team. So congratulations, Ed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
Please.
Oh no, okay. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to be employed with the township as someone who grew up here, has spent a lot of my life here. just grateful for the opportunity to be able to provide service to the township and its residents.
Thanks, Ed. Ms. Fritzen, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, Mayor, thank you. Hey, Ed, congratulations. You certainly deserve this. As Ed said, you know, he grew up here, so he has that extra part of history where he knows the ins and outs of the township, which is so helpful. And many of the residents, through all the coaching that he's done and continues to do throughout his years. So, you know, Ed started out part-time in the clerk's office, basically as extra help. And we were lucky, the clerk's office, to have the opportunity to hire him full-time. And, you know, then COVID hit and came along with all the extra challenges that we all had. And I have to commend Ed for his diligence and commitment to the township. He worked every day in the office during COVID. He did not miss a day, and that was in the heat of COVID. And, you know, he was oftentimes the first face that and voice that Maple residents heard when they were calling, and they were not quite sure, you know, was the town hall open? Wasn't it open? How do I do this kind of permit? How do I get this service in another department? So, you know, Ed was that first line contact, and I listen to him every day. He is extremely patient, polite, helpful, and knowledgeable with all of our residents when they call, and also our foot traffic at the counter, because as you know, when people come to town hall, usually they come to the township clerk's office first to you know, be directed or help there first. He handles the many events that you all get emailed to you. He plays a key role in our open public records requests, which are numerous every single day and are so important according to the law. I trust him. And because if there's a problem, Ed, I'm the one that's probably going to have to pay the fine directly from my personal account. And you do a fabulous job. I just want to say another thing, that during on the fly, when we pivoted and had outdoor cafes for COVID, and it was basically on a 4-day notice, he was right there as a part of my staff and taking the lead and helping turn that around for the many residents and that run businesses and restaurants were able to operate during COVID. So, you know, Ed, I can't say enough. You know, I think you're just fabulous. And the Township Committee, I know, appreciates your work. So thank you.
Totally. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And so we'll let you go, because I know you're, I think you're doing some recruiting or some trials for our amazing recreation basketball program. So we'll let you go back.
Yeah, we're in the gym right now. So I appreciate it very much. And thank you to everyone.
All right. We'll see you soon, Ed.
Take care.
All right. We'll now move to agenda item number 6, which is public comment. Our first public comment section on agenda items only. Limit 3 minutes. So I'll yield the floor to Mr. Waltz to see if anyone wants to address the Township Committee on agenda items only, limited 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. We will now begin the first public comment portion of our meeting on agenda items only. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee on agenda items only, please use the raise your hand function. We will give you 3 minutes to speak and convert you to a panelist. Would anybody like to speak to the Township Committee? I see no one, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Moving on, we'll now go to agenda item number 7, which is reports from departments. I'll yield the floor to our CFO, Mr. Kaloje, who provided us with this report. Mr. Kaloje, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everyone hear me? I didn't test my audio.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we got our audit report on September 30th. So we met the statutory requirement. Well, actually, it was an extension. Statutory is really June 30th. So we met the requirement of filing our audit report on time. We have completed our corrective action plan. Some of the highlights, and there's more lowlights than highlights here, but some of the highlights are the fact that we have, for the third year in a row, managed to decrease the number of findings and recommendations from our auditors this year. We have what would appear to be an increase in the repeat number of audits, but the truth is those are running totals that we've had since I started back in 2018. Seven of the audit findings that we have on our 2020 audit are really pandemic related. Between lockdowns and working remotely and quarantining, there was just a lot of shuffle of records that were then unable to be produced when the auditors asked to see them, or they were produced and incomplete. So I fully expect those things to get addressed in this year's audit, which we'll start performing next year. So things like the cash books that were out for the health department, the DPW, cultural affairs, we should see those things dropping off in next year's audit. Our police outside duty has been a nagging problem for us, going all the way back to probably like 2013. The solutions that we tried to implement last year in order to address that were obviously unsuccessful. So we are now taking a new approach this year, which seems to be producing some better results for us. Instead of the police department collecting the money for outside duty and then sending it over to the finance department, they're now requiring the contractor to come with the application and pay the finance department directly. I think that we really are going to need to look a little closer at how we accept applications for outside duty. Part of the issue is that we'll have a contractor come in and say, I'm going to need a police officer to direct traffic for Monday morning. And there may be some people that are purposely underestimating the number of hours they need. And so what happens is we're collecting in advance like we're supposed to based on the local finance notice for 4 hours, and then they wind up holding them there for 8 hours. We wind up invoicing them, and now we're chasing them for the money. So we're having some internal discussions about addressing the issue, maybe creating minimums so that we don't run into a situation where we're chasing money, but instead we can run into a situation where we are refunding money instead, and then that would ultimately fully address this. The only other item that is of noteworthy is that the outside duty does go all the way back to 2014 in terms of the amounts of collections that we're trying to obtain. And in all likelihood, at some point, in order to comply with getting this off an audit finding, is we're just going to need to write the money off and start with a blank slate. The tax collection premiums and redemptions issue is going to be resolved as well by the end of this year. Whoops. We have put together a chart going back with all the tax sales that we've had. We've now reached the part where we're at critical mass. So what we're going to see on the premium side is a resolution before the governing body sometime in December that will cancel out any premiums that are older than 5 years, and we will realize that as miscellaneous revenue not anticipated for the township. Probably to the tune of about $56,000. The redemption side is a little bit trickier because the redemption side is not so cut and dried statutory. Ultimately, we've gotten it down from what was $106,000 down to roughly $10,000. And it'll be my recommendation in a resolution in front of the governing body to cancel that $10,000. If by some odd quirk that someone who had a tax sale certificate from 2011 shows up, we'll obviously need to do a resolution to pay them because they are owed the money. And at that point, we would take it out of fund balance in order to make them whole. The grants and the state and the federal grants, while not a repeat issue, is a lot of old projects or a lot of closed out projects. Part of the issue with that particular finding is that in years past, in 16, 17, and 18, we had a bad habit of using the grant as both a revenue source for the operating budget and as a funding source for a capital or a bond ordinance. And so essentially what wound up happening is we put on the books and double spent some of the money. So we're currently going over this with engineering so that we can identify the projects that have been closed out and then reviewing the bond ordinances to see if there's any ability to move money over to cover that. If it's not, we're going to have two choices in order to get this finding off of our audit report. The first would be to just cancel the amount of money and then realize it as a deferred charge and raise it fully in taxes in the following year. Or the recommendation that's going to come from the finance department is that once we add up all the money in the various projects that are overexpended, that we adopt a bond ordinance that replenishes that money and gives us the ability to borrow it, and that would then get it off the books on our grant side. Our payroll deductions have also been a nagging problem for us. Essentially, we tried to kind of tweak what we had in terms of the general ledger to see if it was going to fix the problem. And again, similar to the police outside duty, we failed at that effort. And so we are now just going to completely scrap what we have on the books for the general ledger in terms of payroll. And we're just going to build an entire new payroll ledger from scratch so that we can address that issue and finally get it off. Courts was a minor issue because e-ticketing pretty much fixed that problem. Talking to Mr. Bancroft, we wound up with 4 tickets floating out there that were unassigned, and that was because using the e-ticketing, the system was down, and so it didn't pick up, it didn't register those tickets. And so we've implemented a plan in place that on days where the e-ticketing system goes down, they'll review it the following day to make sure that the tickets were recorded, and if not, they'll do a manual entry in order to make sure that we're all square with how we're taking care of that. And again, some of the other stuff is minor things, reporting of dog licenses, sending fees down to the state for dog licenses or marriage licenses. And, given the fact that in 2020, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and we started that out with 1 health officer and a part-time nurse, and then the governing body approved to make it a full-time nurse. And you had 2 people that were responsible for contact tracing, reporting of figures. So we fell short on sending dog license reports on time down to the state. I would argue that that was probably the wiser trade-off in terms of getting an audit report and public health and safety. And so that pretty much covers where we are. The corrective action plan that's on resolution tonight is basically what I've explained to you just in writing, which will now need to be filed with the state. We have 60 days from the time of the audit being delivered, which was to September 30th. To both finish out identifying the corrective action plan, filing it with the state, and then each and every one of you, and this is part of the reason for the resolution, needs to sign a piece of paper that Ms. Fritzen has, attesting to the fact that at a minimum, you read the very end of the audit and read the recommendations and findings. And that pretty much covers the report on the audit. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloje. I will say that your theme, your summary was excellent. I mean, there's a lot of things that were related to COVID, but yet I like the recommendations that were provided and some of them are already in play. And your narrative communicating some things that have been historical have already been addressed and mitigated year over year is a good sign of your leadership of turning some things around across our departments. But I yield the floor to my colleagues for any questions they may have on this report or on this huge document right here.
Mr. Kaloje, do we have this online?
We will have it online because it's part of the best practices. So we will have it online once we adopt the resolutions tonight. And we'll have it online along with our corrective action plan as well. And we're in the process of finishing our best practices inventory. That is due by November 5th, I believe. There's just one outstanding question I need to get confirmation from administration on. And we will wind up scoring 96% on our best practices, which is an improvement again over the year before. And I'm also keenly aware of the fact that we would have had a perfect score of 100% if we didn't have any repeat findings in our audit. So, we can do better, and we're going to work to achieve that.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloje. And for my colleagues, it's resolution 31321 and 31720, on which will go on the consent agenda. So, any additional questions for Mr. Kaloje, or is he okay to go watch the Red Sox game? I think.
Or Red Sox.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloje, for your time.
Thank you, Mayor. Everyone have a good night.
Good night. Okay, we'll now move on to administrative reports. We'll first hear from our township administrator, Mr. Jimes. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few brief things tonight. First, as per our previous discussions regarding the fire chief position, I'm seeking authorization to move forward with filling that position in accordance with our township statutes. So to that end, I would need a motion and a second if you're authorized. So
I move it.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yeah.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes.
thank you. I will proceed accordingly. Two larger policy issues that I've been working on with some of you on the committee, of course, that don't have any finality yet, but just are in process, are meeting with our cannabis committee, moving forward, trying to come up with regulations in accordance with the statutes. And additionally, the CIT social worker program with the community board on police. And I'm working with the deputy mayor and some of the members of that board. I'm moving forward with that. So, both of those are actively in process. And at some point in short order, we'll have some finality on those matters. Lastly, I want to just discuss something that we have been talking about, privately and, individually with individual members, and that's the current vaccination policy. So several weeks ago, the Township Committee authorized a policy that was a vaccination or a weekly testing policy for all municipal employees. At the time that policy was instituted, it was what seemed to be the going policy because it was very early on in these type of rules and regulations. There have been challenges to that policy and the implementation, especially when you have at least 25% of our municipal staff, including first responders, who either opt to not disclose their status or are unvaccinated. It could be one or the other. And the challenge is getting 25% of the municipal staff tested on a weekly basis when you're dealing with shift work and all different schedules. As you learned from the public, or as some of you learned if you were at the Public Safety Committee meeting the other night, we've had incidences that required quarantine from our fire department, from our police department, and not mentioned in that meeting, also a significant part of the Department of Public Works. But it's not just an administrative issue, that's causing problems. It's a science issue. It's a testing issue. The unvaccinated folks, members of the community or of our staff, are not protected simply because they're being tested, and it is a public safety issue for the people that we interact with. Our responders interact with, the most vulnerable residents in our community, and they're exposed to more people, than anybody else. And as a public sector organization, we have a responsibility to not just, prevent people from catching it, but also prevent people from spreading it to our residents. And it is the position of the administration that the way to do this is to update our policy to have a mandatory vaccination policy. I've worked with Labor Council on this significantly over the last week and a half. I previously sent you all a draft copy of an ordinance, of a policy and regulation that we would seek your authorization to implement. We're confident that that policy is a good policy, and it's a workable policy, and it's a science-based policy. So to that end, after some of our discussions that we've had individually and pursuant to the draft policy that you saw previously, we're asking for your authorization to implement said mandatory vaccination policy. And I would need, if you're so inclined to do so, we would need a motion in a second.
Can we get a motion, please?
Mayor, if I may, Mr. Jimes, can you just, for the public's edification, just tell us what the vaccination policy would be, the mandatory vaccination policy?
A mandatory vaccination policy implemented, if so, would require all municipal employees to be provide proof of vaccination by November 7th, proof of first shot, I'm sorry, by November 7th. And then 2 or 3 weeks after that, provide proof of a second shot.
Right. Thank you.
I'll move it.
I'll
There's-
second it.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say something. I agree with this policy totally. I think we need to be clear, and our employees need to try to understand those who have not gotten vaccinated, or the public for that matter, that this is a global public pandemic, and it's not. There have been misinformation out there, as we all know, nationally and internationally, but mostly nationally. And those countries that have strict guidelines and have been doing mandatory vaccinations are doing much better in getting back into a normal world as we knew it before COVID. This is not anything that's punishing anybody or forcing anybody to do anything against their rights. This is a policy that we really need to have people follow to keep everyone safe as you go about your day-to-day business. You have no idea who has compromised, conditions, or who is, privately compromised fighting cancer or whatever, that their immune system cannot fight it. So unless we're all vaccinated, that's just deaths like Colin Powell's, who had that type of condition, are going to continue to happen because people like that are at risk if healthy people are not vaccinated. So I'd encourage all our employees and frankly everybody out there to get vaccinated for the good of all of us. So that's just what I want to say, because I've heard some, a lot of grumblings for a mandate on this from Township employees. And so I just wanted to know where I'm coming from. And I would guess that my colleagues aren't much different in that regard.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Mr. Jimes, what you said about, our delivery of service to the population, there has to be an expectation by the public that it's safe when they come into our buildings or they interact with our employees, that it's safe. And the way for it to be safe is for everyone to get vaccinated. And it is not a matter of individual choice here. It's a matter of public safety and public health. And that's what we're doing. We're acting in the interest of all of our residents and all of our employees.
Thank you, Mr.
Totally.
Any further comments, or do we want to go ahead and move this?
Mayor, it's been moved and seconded.
All right. Hearing no more discussion, Ms. Fritson, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Mr. Desiderio.
Yeah, Mayor, I just have one item. In speaking to Ms. Fritson, the liquor license that was sold some months ago, that process seems to have stalled. And I would just like the Township Committee's consent to work with Mrs. Fritson to notify the successful bidder that he has to aggressively move forward with his application for the license and the license designation.
Do you need a motion? If not,
I just need you. I just want you to just give me. Yeah, all I need you to do is say, yeah, go move forward.
Yes, go
forward.
forward.
please.
Ms. Fritson and I will put together a letter and get it out.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. I'd like to yield the floor back to Mr. Jimes in the event that he had anything else to discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Mr. Desiderio.
No, that was all. That was all. Thank you.
Just don't say goodbye.
Bailey will cut us all off.
Yeah, like
Well, I do have a question for Mr. Jimes.
Mr. DeLuca.
The community refrigerator. It's a little bit of an embarrassment. That building has been put up there on Springfield Avenue. It's become a place for people to throw garbage in. What's going on?
We just recently We just recently had the electric installed within the last 2 weeks. So I will follow up first thing tomorrow and make sure that gets up and running. I know we've reached out, or the offices have reached out to the stakeholders since the electric was installed. So I'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Any more questions for Mr. Gimes? All right, hearing none, we will yield the floor back to Mr. Desiderio.
That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any questions for Mr. Desiderio? Hearing none, we will now yield the floor to Ms. Fritzen. Ms. Fritzen, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. So my first item would be just to give some updates on Election Day, which is, as you all know, Tuesday, November 2nd. And just to go over some of the updates we've done, we've had a walkthrough at Columbia High School last week. And we feel very confident that this will be an excellent substitute polling place. We had our OEM led by Mr. DeLuca, also, with us at Columbia. Tomorrow we have a walkthrough at the OEM, which is the OEM / Maplewood Library. And we're going to go over that building. The solar signboard's been up for well over a week, if not longer, at Clinton on the front lawn, alerting Clinton voters that they are voting at Columbia High School. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you, DPW, for helping get that up so quickly. We had an election information piece put out. Mr. Daffis, thank you for your assistance. And that's been up for, again, well over a week. I think it's a great help to people that either are seeing it on our website or asking to see it when they come here, have questions in person. And we also get it out to some of our seniors who don't feel comfortable coming here. We will mail it to them. Again, early voting in New Jersey, Essex County is October 23rd to 31st. That's also part of our information piece. So I think we're putting out great information with the three choices of vote by mail, in person, early voting, or on election day at your polling site. My other item is just to give an update that we're also gearing up for a great Veterans Day program on Veterans Day, which is November 11th. And we'll be remaining with the program similar that we had last year, where veterans kind of did like a drive into the back of town hall and stayed in their vehicles. And we produced a great program for the people that participated, the veterans, so it was all worth it. And we're going to follow through with that again. Probably sent out 250 letters already to people we identify as veterans here in town, and we'll be getting that also up on the website. So progress on a program is being made. We're formulating it as we speak. And that's it, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Are there any questions for Ms. Fritzen? All right.
I have one for Mr. Gimes. I'm sorry.
All right. So, Ms. Fritzen, you'll the floor to Mr. Gimes. We'll go the other way. Mr. Gimes.
Sorry about that. It's a quick question about the notification that went out for leaf pickup and stuff. Can you check with Mr. Kittner or Mr. Riccardi with regard to the sustainability practices that that members of the Environmental Advisory worked with them for the spring rakeout announcements, to have those links and that information up on our website? Because what went out today or yesterday was old, and it was relevant for this year, but it also excluded that information.
Okay, I will get on that.
Great, thank you. Sorry, Mayor.
No worries, no worries. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Thank you, Mr. Gimes. All right, hearing no other questions for Ms. Fritzen, we'll now start with reports from elected officials. We'll first hear from Mr. Daffis.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to report that we had a very successful art walk on Sunday in the village. It was the new village manager, Catherine Dillette's first art walk, and it was really successful. And despite a few showers here and there, people were really excited to come on out. It was an expanded art walk, a little bit more than what we've done before, and it was very well received. Yourself and myself were out there. I think Miss Adams was there earlier in the day. I think we missed Nancy, but anyway, it was a good times, good music, good art, good people, and we're going to be doing more of that safely as we start to turn the corner from COVID. Fingers crossed. Also on Saturday, Seth Boyden had a successful Harvest Fest, especially in light of some of the things that the school community there at Seth Boyden has been experiencing in the past couple of weeks. It was wonderful to get a lot of love from the community and to be out there and to see folks come out and gather and support our beloved Seth Boyden. So that was great as well. Ms. Fritzen and Mr. Jimes have already covered some items that I was going to mention. Again, as Ms. Fritzen said, early in-person voting, first time in New Jersey. It starts on Saturday, folks. So those of you who have not voted by mail, who are not voting by mail, but who are going to be, doing your Disney thing during election week, do your early in-person voting. Starts on Saturday. And we put out information. It's on our website. There are 10 different locations throughout the county that any registered voter is welcome to go to. So go and check out our website for information. 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays. And reminder that we are using the Scannatron in this election. So you will be given a paper ballot, in-person voting I'm talking about, a paper ballot. You fill in the little circles like you did with the SATs long time ago, and you scan it in. Easy peasy and very safe and private. I want to mention that, we talked about a mandatory vaccination policy that's really important. We are never going to get out of the COVID thing unless more people are vaccinated. As some of you know, and I'm sharing now with the greater public here, I came down with a breakthrough COVID a couple weeks ago. And I was significantly sick, I have to say. And I can't imagine what it would have been like had I not been fully vaccinated. Certainly with some health issues in my family, I would have ended up in the hospital. And considering how sick I got, I probably would not have made it. My physicians have told me that. So, take it from me. Get vaccinated. It's just a shot in your arm. You've had one of these before as a kid in school, like a flu shot or a measles shot. This is the same thing. It's not gonna ruin your genetics. It's not gonna ruin your fertility, and it's not gonna place a tracking device in you. And the only reason why we think that mandating it is important is because it's a public health emergency. Of course, people have rights, personal rights to their bodies, of course. But in this instance, we have a pandemic. It's a public health emergency. And you don't know if you are infecting somebody else by accident. And that somebody else, you may get through it just fine yourself, but that somebody else may be an elderly person or some other health compromised person who's not going to get by it okay like you did, who may die. And you know what? Contact tracing can find out who you are. I know where I got it from, and I was able to contact trace it back. So look, let's just come together and do this and forget about the politics of it and forget about tearing each other down. We have a duty as public servants to take care of each other. That's all this is. And as soon as everyone does it, then we'll get out of this thing and we'll never have to worry about it again. The last thing I want to talk about very quickly as part of my report is obviously Election Day. And, you know, Election Day is going to be really a big deal, especially in our community, as we have a public referendum. We have something on the ballot. Look, I have been out there. I have seen both campaigns, pro and against, doing their thing. That is how democracy works. We want to see people out there canvassing and engaging. That is democracy at work. However, I just want to say, you know, if we can try and be respectful in doing so, not tear each other apart, and certainly not make this personal, because we have to continue living with each other. I mean, I have run into friends of mine in various circles and community groups who were afraid to say hello to me because they're on the other side. They're against our improving the field with an artificial turf. They were afraid to say hello. They thought that I wasn't going to continue being their friend because they're on the other side, right? That's just sad. It's unsettling. It's not who our brand is. We are a community, an engaged community, and we always work through all of our issues, even when we disagree. And hopefully, some of these groups who are using rhetoric that is inflammatory and deeply personal, I hope they recognize that that is going to affect the credibility of their advocacy on other important issues. So when you knock on our door or other people's door, your neighbor's door, if you're going to die on the cross like this, by calling people racists, by calling for people to be beheaded and other things that have been said in social media and in person lately, people are not going to answer your call for social justice. They're not. So let's keep it respectful and let's keep it factual. The thing that we're asking voters to do on the 2nd of November is to either approve funding for the planning and design of an artificial turf field within the enclosed athletic field at DeHart Park, or to not approve that funding. We are not taking the park away from people. We are not turning the entire park into plastic. We're not taking out the trees or the benches or the walking path. The fear-mongering is really uncalled for. It's dangerous. And like I said, it really diminishes the credibility of advocacy. And advocacy is important. Together, we have worked on so many critical issues in terms of equity and justice and inclusion in our community. But we can't go forward and do it like this. Remain respectful, remain factual, certainly be passionate, certainly be out there, do your thing. That's democracy. As a grassroots organizer, you know, I'm all for that. That's my DNA. Get out there and knock on doors, but don't tell people lies and don't make personal statements against their character or personality if they disagree with you. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dafnis. We'll now hear from Ms. Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to echo Mr. Davis's comments about the great art walk in the village this weekend and Music Fest. There was also a handmade market at the Woodland. Thank to Lisa Minardi and her crew for putting that on. It was really great and coincided with the art walk. Just real quick, our subcommittee with South Orange, we're meeting tomorrow on zero waste to just kind of get to a point where we can figure out where we're going and what the recommendation will be. The South Orange trustees, I believe, have this on for discussion at their next meeting. Whenever that is, I guess next week. So we're going to just kind of discuss what the potential is as a shared service before we go out to bid, and going out to bid will really inform what we can and can't do anyway, but I'll bring that to the Township Committee on November 3rd. And then the other thing, I wasn't going to bring up the issue that Mr. Daffis just raised. He's absolutely right that it goes both ways. I've gotten some lovely emails and I guess I'm knowing where Mr. Daffis stands on this issue, talking about facts or not being factual works on both sides of this issue. I've seen an enormous amount of unfactual information being put out there. Everyone knows where I stand on this because I spoke at over the summer about it. I was not planning on talking about it tonight because there's enough talking about it everywhere. So yes, I agree, and I heard that Mr. Daffis and Mr. McGehee are going to be canvassing the Hilton neighborhood this weekend, going door to door, which is their democracy right, as Mr. Desiderio confirmed for us, which is fine. Quickly, since we talked about it, there are financial issues that need to be really talked about as well. There's environmental justice that needs to go out there, and even to say a comment like we're not taking away a park is disingenuous, in that replacing playable grass with artificial turf isn't in some, and locking it and keeping it from people, it might be part of what it is. So it'll be maintained. Also, there'll be money spent on that. We're bonding $1.8 million. So what's not being put out there is some of that financial information. And the warranty for artificial turf is only 8 years, life expectancy 10 to 12. The township, the bond we're talking about passing will not be paid off for about 18 years, according to our CFO. So we're basically spending $175,000 a year approximately for something that we'll be paying for long after its life expectancy. So there's a lot of information and there's a lot of places to get it. So everybody should be entirely, I agree with Mr. Daffis, to be respectful. And that goes, as I said, on both sides of this issue. So I'm not quite sure why it gets so emotional. I really am not. Sometimes when I think about it, I don't understand, but it is what it is. And November 2nd can't come soon enough with regard to that. So, but do get out and vote. And that's all I have to say, man, for now.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll now hear from Mr. DeLuca.
Okay, I'm not going to say anything about turf. I'm just going to urge people to vote. It's important is we have a governor up, we have our state legislators. There's 3 ballot questions, and please come out to vote. And our, of course, Township Committee. I do have 3 things I want to give a update on. One, our electric vehicle charging station program. So we've had a series of meetings with PSE&G, and this is what it's shaping up to be. We're going to be putting together a package that includes DEP funding for the chargers, PSE&G financial support to bring the power to the chargers. That's all the back wires and what have you. And then there'll be some township funds. So we're going to put together that package. We're going to bring it into the budget process, and hopefully we'll be able to include that in next year's capital budget. So we won't be able to do anything now because we don't have the money to do that, but we're going to use these three parts to put together a package. It'll include charging stations at Town Hall so that we can transition our fleet to electric vehicles, and about 5 other charging stations sites around town, 5 to 8. So when we put it all together, we'll get it out to everybody. And as I said, it'll be a topic for next year's budget conversation. Next up on the Springfield Avenue Partnership, a couple of important things. One, we received Main Street, New Jersey designation. This is a program that promotes the history and economic development of business districts in the community. And we're very happy to have received that. And also we've received a grant for the Hilton Neighborhood Springfield Avenue Partnership Program of the Neighborhood Preservation, State Neighborhood Preservation Program. That's funding of $125,000 a year for 5 years. So we're working on that, and that's going to be a huge boost, both for a portion of Springfield Avenue, roughly from Indiana Street to I think Tuscan Street, and also the Hilton neighborhood, and also a part of DeHart Park. And lastly, the Black Lives Matter Poetry Project has ended. So we are in the process of removing the banners. So if anyone sees the banners coming down, they were supposed to come down around now. So it was a terrific program. I give the Arts Council a lot of credit for coming up with it. And I want to thank them for, and all the artists and all the poets who put together their poetry. So that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. All right, I have a few items. First, want to start with public safety. We know we obviously made an announcement tonight, so we look forward to moving forward with finding a new full-time chief for our fire department. We think that is most prudent way to go. I want to recognize the work of Chief Duvall and his team regarding addressing some of the concerns that we were dealing with earlier this summer with Hughes Street. We've seen a diminishing activity there, but we continue to be very vigilant in regards to that. On Thursday evening, my colleagues and I will be looking at 4 candidates to replenish our community board on police. It's still a very important component of our relationship between the community, the township, and our police department. From an economic development perspective, we, as a planning board, made an improvement regarding making 7 West Parker a area for needed rehabilitation. Redevelopment rather. So we will work with that potential developer in that area. We're also very proud, and this is kudos to Mr. Daffis, that this Saturday at 10 o'clock we'll be opening Greenway Market. The grand opening. There's a lot of festive activities around that event, and we're very excited about that. Our master plan committee continues to meet. We met on Monday. We're meeting again this Monday. We are on target to finish our RFP, and then we'll send that out, the RFP out, so we can move forward with our master plan, our first overarching master plan in a couple of decades. Events in town. This Friday, 7:30 at the Woodland, our committee will welcome Bernie Williams and Gil Paris Quartet. This is a Grammy-nominated artist group. The group includes, yes, Baseball Hall of Famer and guitar virtuoso Bernie Williams. That's center fielder number 5-1 for the Yankees, and the fellow guitarist and Grammy nominee Gil Paris. So the production is being presented by Smooth Jazz, New Jersey. Tickets range anywhere from $50 to $60 and are available to be purchased online. So if there are tickets still available, please come out. It should be a great time. And then also this Sunday, we'll be having our 4th annual Diwali Festival, which is a unique multicultural celebration of the Festival of Lights, as well as South Asian arts and culture. And it's a great time. For those who've not been before, it's a good time. And it's been in the Woodland before, but we're now going to be outdoors in Memorial Park. So please come out and enjoy that on Sunday afternoon. And then I want to briefly just touch on the Seth Boyden incident, the hijab investigation. The incident at Seth Boyden continues to be an active investigation. It's being led by our police department. And while we all can agree that no one should lay hands on another person's child, absolutely, we must have due process. When dealing with an issue or a crisis, the school district, South Orange School District, works in collaboration with the Township and South Orange on a collaborative plan of progression. The activity on social media regarding this incident was not only alarming, but disconcerting, as some of those actions put our children, teachers, and administrators in the potential of harm's way. Our school district staff should not be afraid or feel a heightened sense of concern for their personal safety in their work environment, nor should the alleged actions of one employee condemn the entire school, staff, district, or community. Social media is not a reliable form of due process. And although the nature of allegations can cause an emotional response, again, I call for patience and civility during this time. Now, I will now also address the turf fields, and I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this or not, but since it's been brought up, I will. With the turf grass fields, it means so much to a community more than a simple soccer game or a sports type or sports in general. It really potentially affords us the opportunity to hold more outdoor events town-wide, from Rent Party Fest to the Mapso Funk Fest, or even a main stage for the Porch Fest. It could also help drive commercial commerce on Newark Way and other places where we have very few retail establishments. We can all agree that we can find studies that argue in favor of one's preference, and that's fine. But it doesn't take away from the core points of what we're trying to address. We as a township must provide services and basic infrastructure to our community. And we are working hard to address the problem of the hard athletic fields consistently not being usable while year-over-year field usage demands increase. We need an athletic field that brings us to an adequate standard with all communities in Essex County, from Newark to West Orange, and frankly, in our community. New state-of-the-art construction equipment has cooling and draining systems. As has already been mentioned, several public statements which have been made on this issue are frankly false or misleading at best. There is no plan. That is false. Hopefully, with the passing of this referendum, we can move forward. Because as noted in the referendum, it stated turf all or partial, hence no full plan. Turf fields are unhealthy. Our field would only last 10 years. That annual maintenance costs only $20,000 a year with only a one-time $43,000 expense. In actuality, we average about $44,000 a year, $43,626 to be exact, in the last 7 years from 2005 to date. And our total cost is over $305,400 to date. And this is also taking into consideration of student work internally, and then also outsourcing that service as well. And although the bond is for a little over $1.8 million, it's only 1.6 that's related to potential up to 1.6 related to the turf field. Local pickup games and casual use will be marginalized in favor of organized sports. Less access and equity, also false. But the thing I do want to address is the toxic environment on social media. My position of being in favor of turf grass does not make me a racist. As a Black man, not only am I finding that insulting personally to me and my family, but as an embarrassment to our township. As we boast about diversity, equity, and inclusion, for a community that continues to insist that hate has no home here, we cannot use this or any other issue for that matter as a platform to dehumanize each other. Let's do better. If you're opposed to turf grass, that's okay. One group stated that we cannot support artificial turf and also be climate change activists. I agree. We can simply agree to disagree, but let's stop the scare tactics of disease and other perpetuating false narratives. We don't have to look too far in our history to see where misinformation has resulted in fear and great violence earlier this year. Let's not lose sight of the actual goal, which is to increase and enhance participation in sports, which allows youth to make lasting friendships, promotes physical and mental wellness, builds confidence, leadership, a sense of community, and teaches collaboration. This is about providing the opportunity for our children, Black, interracial, Asian, Haitian, Irish, Italian, wealthy and deserving, to know that they can play. Let the kids play. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 10, where we have no discussion items. So now we'll move on to agenda item number 11, which is our consent agenda, and I'll take a motion for our consent.
Mayor, I move the 14 items on the consent agenda.
May I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Sorry, yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
First time doing this, Mr. Daffis?
I know, right?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We'll now move on to agenda item number 12, public comment on any subject matter, limited 3 minutes. I will yield the floor to Mr. Waltz.
Good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. We will now begin the second public comment portion of this meeting on any subject matter. If any meeting attendee would like to address the Township Committee, please use the raise your hand function. We will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Would anybody like to address the Township Committee? Okay, Mayor, first up we have Marion Robb. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
I would like to note that anyone wanting to speak, you will need to accept the invitation to leave and rejoin as a panelist in order to be promoted.
Hi, and thank you for letting me speak. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marion Robb, and I live in Maplewood, and it's no secret that I do not support artificial turf being placed upon DeHart Field. I was planning on talking about turf today, this evening at the Public Speaks, but I wasn't planning on specifically responding to some what I think are very disturbing allegations of what myself and the Committee to Protect DeHart Park are doing right now out on the streets and on social media. First of all, with all due respect, turf is not a grass field. So saying turf grass field that we want to put in DeHart Park is incorrect. Yeah, we need to provide services and basic infrastructure to our town. I'm a taxpayer, and I've been a taxpayer since 2001, and I'd like to talk about providing some basic infrastructure like, say, improving our 1920s crumbling sewer infrastructure, which, as we all know, led to devastating and deadly events after Tropical Storm Ida earlier this fall. Climate change is real. Science is real. There'll be more Idas coming. I think we all know that. And talking to us about how $1.6 million is really only going to turf, you know what? That means you're really only going to be able to buy the cheapest and most toxic turf on the market. This greensplaining about green turf and how turf can be environmental is exactly that. It is not the truth. And I suggest every tax-paying resident of Maplewood look up what you are paying right now in your municipal property taxes and think about whether or not you want to fund a $1.6 million bond that is going to last, according to the Township Committee, saying so right here, more than 18 years. We thought it was only a 15-year bond. So thank you for letting us know that we're actually talking about an 1.6 million, 18-year bond. And we all know, and everyone can do their research on this, that even the artificial turf industry will tell you these fields only last 10 to 12 years maximum. And that is with perfect maintenance. Do we think our town is going to be able to perfectly maintain this shiny new plastic grass field? They certainly didn't do a great job maintaining DeHart. And last but not least, there's an old adage in the environmental community about 20 years ago, and I'm going to bring it up again. Think globally, act locally. Everything we do right now, the planet is on the brink of collapse.
That is your time.
It's a fact.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp.
Okay, Mayor, next up we have Deb Giordano. I'm sorry, Gregorio. We'll transfer you over to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes.
Hi, folks. Okay. I'm Debbie Gregorio. I live on Kensington Terrace, and I'm here representing the neighborhoods of Kensington, or the streets of Kensington, North Terrace, Edgewood, Crowell, Academy, Oakland, and Hickson Place, essentially the neighborhoods surrounding Columbia High School. I want to be very clear. We've lived here a long time, a lot of us, and we consider Columbia High School our neighbor. Happens to be a neighbor with 2,000 relatives that show up every day, but we have no greater expectations of the high school than we do of each other. Now, under normal conditions, we experience incredible traffic congestion, illegal parking, parking in front of driveways, standing and idling, parking too close to stop signs, illegal U-turns, and speeding. Even though we have speed bumps, yes, people speed. There are also occasional fights, theft, property damage, and just lots of trash. Now, that's normal and it's not acceptable, but that's what we usually see. What has happened last week, all of a sudden we saw people parking on the west side of, and specifically on the west side of Kensington, also up on North Terrace, where parking is highly restricted to 9 to 11 and 1 to 3. There's no parking 9 to 11 and no parking 1 to 3. However, kids are parking all day long. And when we confronted the kids, they told us that they had permission from the principal, who had arranged it with the mayor and the police department, to allow them to break the law and park across the street. Now, this is like so unacceptable on so many levels. The reason why we have restricted parking on our streets is for safety concerns. And given what I said earlier about the congestion and all of the other things we see, we really have some serious safety issues. Never mind leaf pickup. And I mean, it's just nuts. We can't have, what we're talking about here today is asking you to stop this. Now, the second thing is that the school, the reason why this is happening is also mind-boggling. The school doesn't know how to fill a pothole or park a bus, okay? They've moved the buses from Chisowitz Field because they were getting broken to the student parking. And then without consulting the neighborhood at all, they just let them break the law and park here. And the result of that, when you tell people, and teens and their adult parents, they can break the law, they start breaking lots of laws. And so now we're seeing, I can't even tell you, parking everywhere. Now, the streets are narrow as it is.
30 seconds.
It's really tough. So we're here for two things. One, we need immediate resolution to this. We got to get these cars off the street and the students back in their lot. We don't want to be coming back here in 2 weeks to talk about this again. What we do want to come back and talk with you about is conducting a traffic study in the Columbia High School neighborhood. The speed bumps came in, they were helped, but they're no longer enough, especially in light of additional development that's happening in our neighborhood shortly. So we need, I'm here to ask who on the town council will resolve this for us tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D. Gregorio. Hope I pronounced that right. I will work with Mr. Jimes and with our chief, Chief Duvall. We'll get a meeting set up the next day or two to address this issue. I didn't know I gave permission, so that was news to me. So I appreciate that insight. But we'll address this in short order. Obviously, first addressing the parking issue, and then we'll look at that study and work with our engineering committee for that.
That's great. The community, the neighborhood's very active and very engaged. We are all connected with each other, and we're happy to be and want to be a part of that. So feel free to reach out to me. I will send you my contact information. I'll reach out to the rest of the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
I would also, if I could just add one quick comment, I would ask you to reach out to the school district, to the Board of Education. They need to have a walk, encourage people to walk. There's no reason in the world that most people can't walk to Columbia High School. And that would make it.
I appreciate that. We were at the board meeting last night to no avail. We did visit with the principal, was lovely, but we didn't get a definite one way or another what was going on. That's why we're here tonight. And I agree with you. We live in a very walkable town. We have feet, they work. Let's use them.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, next up we have Stephen Sigmund. We will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes.
Hello, you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks. Hi. Thanks for having me. I want to speak in favor of the multi-use field at DeHart. And I know there's been a lot of points made already, so I will just make a couple very quickly. One, we really want to keep our girls and young women in this town playing sports. We know from study after study that girls who stay playing sports through high school have higher self-esteem, better self-confidence, better body image, better grades. And we often lose girls and young women at about age 12 and 13 before they go to high school to not playing sports. And what happens, unfortunately, here is that the girls teams often get short shrift in high school because there is only the one field at Underhill, and boys football and soccer often win out. In fact, my own daughter, who's in 10th grade this year and plays JV field hockey, has had a number of games and practice that's canceled. 1 week alone, there were 2 games and a practice canceled because there was no field availability. Last night, there were 4 or 5 kids who missed practice because the practice had to be changed from 3:30 to 6:15 because there was no available field at 3:15. So, I mean, look, it's a fundamental problem that there aren't enough reliable fields in this town. And, other towns around the region, have a number of multi-use fields and also have permeable, open, environmentally friendly space. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. The second point I'd like to make is about alternatives. I know there's been some discussion about why can't we do this somewhere else in some other neighborhood. There really aren't a number of alternatives, particularly if you want to protect the environmental and open space, because most of the other fields, Underhill, Floods Hill, Meadowlands, Waterlands, they're called that for a reason, Chiswick, Memorial Park, those are all on a floodplain, right? And they're necessary to not be developed or capped because they need to drain water. And then third, in terms of some of the environmental arguments, I mean, you want to talk about the heat cap and heat domes, the parking lots, the unused parking lots and businesses that are around DeHart that a lot of the landlords are just sitting on and hoping for development at some point, certainly cause more heat than a multi-use field ever would.
30 seconds.
And then lastly, I just say we've seen this movie and it doesn't work, right? In 2008, this was multi-use fields was voted down. DeHart was supposed to be redeveloped. It hasn't been working. A couple of weeks ago, there was one rain, and the next day on a Sunday, none of the sports could be played. So, we've done this, we've tried this, and it went the wrong direction. We shouldn't make the same mistake twice. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Thank you. Anyone else want to address the township, Mr. Waltz?
Yes, Mayor. Next up, we have Officer Weeks Rivera. We will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak. Officer, you're muted.
Too low. Her volume's too low. Volume's too low.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Much better.
Yes.
Much better.
Oh, great. Hi, good evening or good afternoon, everyone. I'm reaching out to speak to you all in reference to the new mandatory vaccination. Now, I was listening to everyone talk before it, and a lot of people are highlighting and downplaying certain statistics when it does come to the science. The CDC also says that people who are fully vaccinated can still contract and spread COVID. So people make it seem as though people who are unvaccinated are either anti-vaxxers or just are negative about it, quote unquote, anti-Trumpers or with that energy. Myself, I just had a baby. I have medical reasons as well as religious reasons why I don't want to be vaccinated. And you guys are forcing people to choose to feed their families versus being smart and healthy and just be unvaccinated. With the vaccine doesn't stop people from getting COVID or spreading it. Other precautions and things, we can take care of each other. However, forcing a person, hence us, to take the vaccination is crazy. Just like, people in Texas higher ups in Texas forcing women to whether they can or cannot have abortions. We too should have autonomy what to do with our bodies, and we can also be unvaccinated and healthy at the same time. I don't understand why making it mandatory for us. Oh, more importantly, before I get kicked off, people who are fully vaccinated, we are not tracking them because they don't get tested every week, right? So again, if a person is fully vaccinated, halfway vaccinated, they too can have COVID, maybe not have bad symptoms, and spread it to everyone else. We got to stop thinking that people who are unvaccinated are just walking around with COVID. We are not. We're healthy people. We want to do things right, but we choose for whatever reason, whatever it may be, to not be vaccinated. I shouldn't have to choose my career that I love, that I chose and worked hard for, to feed my family because I don't want to put a certain, get a certain vaccine, or maybe I'm not ready to get a vaccine for whatever reason. I shouldn't be forced to do that and forced to not work in a pandemic because I don't want to get a vaccination. It's very harmful, and it's the dogma and negative stigma behind people who do not want vaccines is it's very hurtful. We pride ourselves in Maplewood for being diverse and loving and all those things. This mandatory thing that you guys are
30
voting for
seconds.
today is
30
not
seconds.
it's not inclusive. It's very it's pushing people apart, and we can be healthy and unvaccinated. And I think it's very unfair, and it's a hard place because people will lose their jobs, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to make that choice. I should have the rights over my own body. Me and my doctor should make certain decisions, not you all. You guys are like playing God right now, and it's very scary. And you guys downplayed it, and you know it shouldn't be this way.
That is your time.
I'm done.
Thank you, Officer Weeks. Thank you, Officer Weeks.
Next up, Mayor, we have Heather Soslovsky. We will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes.
Hi, everybody. I know you think I'm probably here to talk about turf. I'm actually not. I am here to talk about the field, though. I was in contact with 2 of the township committee members this weekend with what was going on the field. I know that Greg was out of town. He let me know, and I had separately confirmed that both Lincoln Landscaping and Glenn from, I don't remember the sprinkler company's name, were going to be present on Monday. I spent Monday at the field at DeHart. Unfortunately, I didn't see anybody from the town. There were a few residents who came down. I learned that the initial report that something had occurred on Friday with Lincoln Landscaping doing aeration was all incorrect. I actually learned that on Saturday. Nothing occurred that Friday. Lincoln Landscaping hadn't been out for 2 weeks at that point, and there was zero evidence of aeration at that time. I have now spoken with Glenn, who says that the irrigation system is 3 feet. Those lines are 3 feet underground. They wouldn't have been hit during aeration. There are, in fact, a few broken sprinkler heads. At least 2 of the 3 have been broken for a long time, one of which definitely caused the larger puddle that was straight back from the entrance gate that's on the sidelines of the larger field. But what I was really concerned about is that I learned that at the beginning of the year, he had requested a remote access device that would cost about $3,800 that would connect to the local weather center and ensure that we didn't overwater the field. It is my understanding, and this is directly from Glenn, as well as Nancy from Lincoln Landscaping was present, but most of my information is from Glenn, the sprinkler guy, that when he went into the room at DeHart, the sprinkler was set up to run 3 times a week at 4 a.m. He gave me the exact days. It was in the on position, except that you guys did turn on water off on Saturday after that was requested. But prior to the huge mud situation on Saturday, it had been going off for 15 minutes at 4 a.m. 3 times a week. That equates to 0.25 inches of water. The current evaporation rate is 0.07 inches per month. So you're putting out 3 inches of water in addition to rain, but the evaporation won't allow for that. Very few fields, maybe none, could have handled
30 seconds.
The DPW should not be handling watering or anything else of this field. In fact, they mowed it after it is mud. We could see the lines through it. And you all got pictures of the fact that it looked like vehicles had been through it. And it turns out those were DPW vehicles mowing and doing other things on the field when it was mud, and they should have turned off the sprinklers, but instead kept them running. The
10
water main
seconds.
is now off, and that's the only way the field is open. But seriously, you need to do better. And in addition, like, what about the community fridge? Why are we talking about that again? I asked about it at least 6 weeks ago, and 2 weeks ago at the
That is your
TC meeting,
time.
we were told that the electric was fixed then. A lot of things need.
Thank you, Ms. Salowski.
Mayor, next up, we have Rich Weiner, who will convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. First of all, I want to say I have been working with the committee to protect the Hart Park. I was at the table we had in town this weekend. I had a very nice chat with Mr. Daffis. At that time, I want to note in response to what he was saying before that we have tried very hard to be factual and to avoid sensationalist claims. And let me tell you, there are many out there that one could choose to present that we haven't, because we didn't have data on those. And that we have avoided scrupulously making personal attacks. I don't accept responsibility for what happens on social media. I think we all know social media gets crazy. It does so on both sides. But I think our committee has been better than that. Second thing I want to say is that $1.6 million, as has been cited, doesn't even get the town a whole new field added to its inventory of fields. We have a field now. The pro turfers claim that it isn't being used sufficiently, that we missed 25%. They missed 25% of their games. So we're talking about $1.6 million to add 25% of a new field to the system. That doesn't seem like a good deal to me. Third, there are real risks, environmental risks and health risks that come with this turf. I ask all of you to take a look. Page 5 of the Star Ledger, it's in the New York Times, it's in all the news today. Stories about the EPA increasing regulation of PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals, the ones that never go away and have serious health risks. We know that these chemicals are in turf. I can't tell you exactly how much will get into the air and the water and the lungs of people playing on the turf, but it's a serious issue that we need to pay attention to. Lastly, and I'm trying hard not to repeat things I've said before. Lastly, let me say that oddly, or maybe not oddly, I think we respect you guys more than the people that are on your side do.
30 seconds.
The pro turfers. The single most common comment we've heard when pro turfers come to our table is, quote, "This town is incompetent to make a grass field work." We don't think you're incompetent to make a grass field work. We think it can be done. And if we're fortunate enough to have carry the day on election day, we hope to be able to work with you and those on the other side to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Okay, Mayor, next up we have Tim Fryatt. We'll convert you to a panelist and allow you 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Tim Fryatt. I'm a Maplewood resident and a parent of 2 athletic kids, age 10 and 13. Next to me is my son, Jesse, who I'll introduce you to. He has something to say in a little bit. I've coached many teams over the years, many sports, and I also practice architecture and planning and landscape architecture. I was pro turf in 2008, and I'm pro turf today. The Hart Field is a designated athletic field. It has been according to the sign in the park since 1939. Long ago, it was fenced, has lights, parking at it. The use is not changing. The question is, what's a better athletic surface? Grass has been very costly and ineffective. Its inability to be used, even in a light rain, has resulted in a lot of cancellations. Synthetic turf is durable. It can handle 4 times the amount of playable time than grass with very little maintenance. In the 14 years since grass narrowly won the last vote on this, the turf technology has only gotten better. Even if the complex maintenance routine that this organic lawn demands was effective, it still would not be able to nearly handle the demand that we have in town. And the turf field at Underfield, I'll just point out, has been there for 15 years. So the other thing is synthetic turf is green. It's more green than grass. I'm not asserting this. The U.S. Green Building Council, America's preeminent authority in sustainable construction, offers lead points for sustainable turf, not grass, because they know that sustainability starts at the macro scale. Lawns consume 3 trillion gallons of water a year, 200 million gallons of gas, and 70 million gallons of pounds of pesticide and fertilizers. It's a really, it's odd, but grass is not green. It's really a scourge on the environment. And the pesticides kill and pollutes downstream, and the never-ending mowing pollutes the air. Just because we call this field organic today doesn't mean it was in the past or will be in the future. Artificial turf lowers carbon emissions, conserves waters, eliminates pesticides, and is made from recycled plastics and rubber, reducing landfill. It's
30
also
seconds.
safe. For all these reasons, it's widely used, including every town around us. I'd like to close by just inviting my son, Jesse, to tell you a little bit about his experience.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm in 8th grade and I've been playing soccer for a long time. At the Heart, almost a lot of our games and practices got canceled and I couldn't practice during the winter. So, and almost every other town has it. So it's kind of annoying. And also I moved away from Cougar soccer because it got to a point where I couldn't practice or play. So I had to move to a different club. And
vote yes on November 2nd to approve our fields, and let's let the kids play. It's time to turf to heart. Let's not make the same costly mistake again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fried, and thank you for your service on the planning board.
Mayor, I see no one else.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Seeing no one, we'll move on to agenda item number 13 rather, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Night.